The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes. It is protected under Article 17 and 107 of the United States Fair Use Code. This is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the review. In my review of Terror of the Autons, I have briefly touched on plans to complete a story involving the Doctor and the Master that would be and come to a head in the final game, a story meant to be the ending for the Master at the end of Season 11. It would have been written by Barry Letts, and from what I can gather, the story outlines had been written when Roger Delgado passed away in a car crash while filming in Turkey in 1973. The plans for the final game had to be scrapped and haven't been seen to this day, except possibly in Mark Gatiss' novel Last of the Gadarene, the television story Planet of Fire, and the 10th Doctor finale The End of Time. Although the truth to these isn't confirmed, so don't take my word on it. The death of Delgado is what made Jon Pertwee wish to leave at the end of Season 11, due to the retiring of the standard format of the time with the Earthbound stories, and also the departure of Katie Manning. So Barry Letts met up with writing partner Robert Sloman to write Pertwee out in a story that really celebrates the era of the Pertwee stories, showing off every aspect of the era that they forged together. In today's story, Planet of the Spiders. Let's begin with part 1, where we open the story with a shot of Mike Yates, and then cut to the Doctor and the Brigadier at a show of some sort. The Brigadier calls this a waste of time, but gets into it more as a Turkish dancer comes onto the stage. Mike Yates, meanwhile, is at a Buddhist monastery after the events of Invasion of the Dinosaurs getting him kicked out of unit. So he came here to repent because he felt guilty about what he did. He sneaks into the cellar where some monks are chanting to a mandala that glows blue, and Yates runs away. With the Doctor and the Brigadier, the man they came for goes on stage, a psychic. With the Buddhists, they realize that they're being watched by Yates but decide to continue their ceremonies the next night. The next day, the Doctor brings in the psychic, Professor Clegg, where we get the Doctor claiming that he really is a clairvoyant. He points out the mistakes he made in his act to make the Doctor believe this, which is a perfect example of Pertwee cliché number 1, the Doctor being smug to those he's trying to help. He asks Clegg what exactly he can do and demands a demonstration. So Clegg uses his mind to make a tray raise up from the table and fly across the room. But he says he's losing all of his sanity over this, and the Doctor tells him that these powers are dormant in everyone and it is nothing to be afraid of. At the monastery, the leader of the chanting guys, Lupton, protested Shoji, the sort of leader of the monastery just below the abbot, for allowing a female journalist to come there to get an interview. Shoji spouts some wise Buddhist nonsense at him and tells him she's coming because Yates has already gotten her at the station. Cut to the car where Sarah Jane asks Mike what this is all about. Lupton doesn't want to stop the Knights of Chancing, and we're introduced to Tommy, a mentally disturbed man who means well, so of course is treated horribly by Lupton and his cronies, but doesn't notice, thank goodness. Sarah Jane tries to get Yates to tell her what this is all about. Mike explains about why he's there after we last saw him, and we cut to the chanting monks. Sarah Jane doesn't believe they could be up to something, while Mike thinks they're in touch with some otherworldly power. I mean, he does know about aliens, so if it was really a god or something not of this world, he should know. He doesn't want to tell the Doctor or the Brigadier because of his previous actions, and Sarah Jane agrees to look around when the car nearly crashes into a tractor, but when they look back, the tractor's not there, which is enough to convince Sarah Jane something weird's going on here at the very least. The Doctor hooks Clegg up with some headphones, and we get Pertwee cliché number 2, technobabble, and lots of it. The Brigadier gives Clegg his watch, and he speaks the history of the watch and how it was given to the Brigadier by a woman called Doris, who, you may want to know, would become his wife later on. The Doctor turns on one of his machines and gives him Pertwee cliché number 3, the sonic screwdriver, which causes cliché number 4, flashbacks on the screen to Carnival of Monsters. Sarah Jane interviews Choji about this meditating could turn up all sorts of nasties. He has to excuse himself to go to the meditation class, but informs her that that isn't their way. Clegg is stopped because of what he saw when Benton comes in with the package from Joe Grant addressed to the Doctor, or Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, or Captain Yates, or her lovely Sergeant Benton. They give it to Clegg, who says it's come a long way. It's actually from beyond the stars, and it is the Blue Jewel. You know, Pertwee cliché number 5, Metebelis 3. And yes, of course, it is the crystal. Sarah Jane sneaks into the meditation class with Yates, and they find that all the monks are working with Choji seem to be fine and normal. They leave and run into Lupton, who's heading down to the cellar to meditate. Sarah Jane tells him that they had an accident on the way there, but Mike stops her from speaking and forces them to leave. He explains that that was Lupton, the guy that he's been suspicious about. And Lupton tells his lackey that they'll be carrying on his plan because Sarah Jane doesn't seem to be any sort of a threat. Mike tells her that they'll be sneaking back in, so they climb the room but run into Tommy, who Sarah Jane tells to be quiet, and she gives him a brooch, which gets him, to bug her off. They head to the cellar and hide when the monks come in and start to chant. A unit the lab starts to shake with the crystal, as on the mandala in the monastery, a giant spider appears, or, as I like to call it, Pertwee cliché number 6, end of first episode monster reveal. This leads into part 2, where the spider shocks one of Lupton's men, and Lupton tries commanding it to leave. It says it's come to give him the power and attaches itself to his back and disappears. Meanwhile, Professor Clegg is dead and they don't know how he died. The Doctor thinks the machine recorded his thoughts, which it did. He was thinking of giant spiders. Lupton makes his cronies leave, while the Doctor gets ready to look into the crystal himself. Sarah Jane sneaks out of the monastery while Mike wants to speak with the abbot about all this. Lupton comes around the corner explaining the spider's still on his back and tells his men to go get some rest. They'll see each other in the morning, and the spider says it can find the crystal. It's come to get the crystal because it's the source of their power. The Doctor takes some coffee, and the Brigadier wants to know about the spiders. The Doctor tells him Pertwee cliché number 7, the Doctor's hermit story, and says he can only see his old teacher's face in the crystal. Tommy stops Mike from getting Campo and forces him to go back to bed. Back at the lab, we skip Pertwee cliché number 8, the Doctor not listening to his companion. Yes, Sarah Jane is trying to tell the Doctor what she saw, and he doesn't listen. Until, of course, the bit about the spiders. Outside, Lupton's arrived and asks some officer where the Doctor is, and when asked for his pass, he shocks the man. He goes inside and is stopped by Benton, who gets the shock treatment, while the Doctor and Sarah Jane discuss the possibility of spiders on Metebelis 3, although the Doctor doesn't remember them being there when he went in the Green Death. Lupton uses the spider's power to make the crystal disappear, and we lead into Pertwee cliché number 9, extremely long action sequences. Well, not an action sequence per se, but we get a very long chase scene which sees the Doctor, Benton, the Brigadier, and Sarah Jane chase Lupton using cliché number 10, the Doctor's different cars and gadgets, until they get into a hoverboat chase, which ends in Lupton disappearing after the Doctor climbs into his boat. This leads into part 3. So Lupton was teleported back to the monastery where Tommy watches him appear, and Choji greets him. He goes to his room where he talks with the spider that they've done it. He tells him to clear his mind because if the other spiders on Metebelis 3 knew what he was thinking, they'd kill him. So, luck of all lucks, cut to the throne room on Metebelis 3 where the Queen, voiced by Kismet Delgado, Roger Delgado's widow, speaks that they've gotten the crystal. Lupton Spiders gets Lupton's permission to go to Metebelis 3 so they can help conquering Earth because the Great One, all hail, the big boss of the planet, desires it. Lupton Spider tells him to rest to allow the power to return to him, and when he lies down, the spider gets off his back and starts to take a quick look around. The Doctor has arrived, and Choji tells him that Lupton couldn't be with them because he saw Lupton at the same time the Doctor did. Choji also says Lupton couldn't be a master of sorcery because none of them there are magicians of any sort. And one of Lupton's men wakes him up and notices the crystal in his hand. He tells Lupton that they need to stop, and Lupton realizes the spider's gone. Lupton explains he's come to the monastery after 25 years as a salesman when he was taken out of power in a merger of some sort. While he goes on about this, considering it's kind of boring, Tommy looks in the window, which has been opened, and steals the crystal because it looks pretty and, well, mentally ill. Lupton explains that he's become Pertwee cliché number 11, a villain who wants to take over the world. Tommy goes into the cupboard under the stairs where he keeps a shoebox of all the things he found pretty. The spider returns to inform Lupton that Choji's coming to get him, and he gets his man Barnes to leave before Choji can arrive, and they start to prepare to meet the doctor. Lupton doesn't want to, so the spider starts to use Pertwee cliché number 12, mind powers, to make him bend to her will. Lupton then figures out how to make the spider taste its own medicine by making a remark on how he is cleverer than the humans on Metebelis 3. It gets back on his back, and they realize the crystal's gone missing. The doctor asks Choji just to see Lupton, and Choji replies that time is an illusion. Tommy gets Sarah Jane's attention, and he wants to give her a present, so she goes with him to get it. Choji gets one of the monks to show them to Lupton's room, while Lupton meanwhile says they're going to bluff their way to make the spiders think they have the crystal, and Sarah Jane watches as he heads down to the cellar. Tommy comes with her present, and she tells him that to tell Mike Yates that she's following Lupton into the cellar. She runs off without her present, which turns out to be the Metebelis crystal of all things, so cue sad trombone music. Sarah Jane hides behind some bags as Lupton lays out the supplies for the ritual. Tommy's able to shout out that Sarah Jane and Lupton are in the cellar, and so the doctor and Yates go down to the cellar to find Sarah Jane standing on the mandala and is transported to Metebelis 3. Here, represented by cliché number 13, really bad CSO. The doctor and Yates leave the cellar, and the doctor says he'll go after her. Sarah Jane is dragged to the village of the humans on Metebelis 3. They want to kill her because they think she must be a spy. It doesn't help that she mentions the word spider, which for some reason is forbidden. See, the spiders here have some sort of a complex. A man comes out of the house and saves her because she's a stranger and obviously doesn't know the law. Sarah Jane explains she's from Earth and doesn't know how she got there. A horn sounds, signaling the coming of the Queen of the Eight Legs, and they get back inside their homes. The Queen is carried in, calling for Eric so he can be punished for attacking a guard. If he doesn't come out, one member of each family will be taken. Eric, the man that helps Sarah Jane, wants to give himself out, but his father goes to speak with the Queen. The Queen doesn't want to hear it and demands Eric and tells her he's gone to the hills, so his father takes his place and is dragged off to be eaten. His wife goes out to try to stop them, and the Queen notices a strange presence, so Sarah Jane decides to come quietly. The Doctor dematerializes the TARDIS and lands on Metebelis 3. He steps out and is confronted with the guards. He kneels to the Queen of the Eight Legs and gives greetings. She wants to know where they've come from, but they're going to take the Doctor, who defends himself with Pertwee cliché number 14, Venusian Aikido, but he is shot down by a guard, presumably dead. This leads to part 4, where the Queen demands to leave and is going to punish the guard who let Sarah Jane escape into, just a head shawl. And they take the Doctor off. Back on Earth, Yates is sneaking around trying to find Lupton. Back on Metebelis 3, the Doctor seems to be dead, and Eric drags Sarah Jane inside because it's curfew. His mind is swayed when Sarah Jane sees the Doctor flinch. Lupton's cronies are all concerned for the vanishing Lupton, and the doorknob turns and Barnes opens it to reveal Tommy, who is illiterate, so he doesn't understand that there's a do not disturb sign on the door. He decides to go to the cupboard for some reading. The Queen is brought into the throne room where Lupton is waiting. His spider explains he's here because the council asked. He mentions he's got the crystal which the Great One needs. Lupton says that the Great One will go on waiting until they get what they need. They're informed that the Doctor and Sarah Jane are here on the planet, and his celebration is put on hold. Tommy's in his cupboard where he starts reading a picture book, and every so often he glances at the Metebelis crystal. It starts to glow and affects Tommy's mind. He passes out while, with Sarah Jane, the Doctor doesn't wake up. Tommy gets up and suddenly is able to read with ease, which makes him extremely ecstatic. All of his mental illnesses seem to have disappeared in the snap of a finger. Eric's mother doesn't wake up, and Eric's brother demands an attack on the Eight Legs. Sarah Jane says that the Doctor could help if he would only wake up. The Doctor starts moaning about something in the TARDIS in a leather satchel which can save him. He gives Sarah Jane a key, which now looks more alien. She heads outside, knowing the risks, and hides from the guards. She's able to get into the TARDIS and comes out with the machine, but is confronted by Lupton, who is just delightfully evil in this little scene. She's taken away, but leaves the machine, and Eric slips out and grabs it. He makes it back to the hut, where he takes out the headset from the bag. The Doctor starts mumbling to give him the machine, which they do. He pulls a lever, which emits a sound and some sparks, healing the Doctor somehow. Tommy goes into the library and picks up a book of poetry by William Blake and starts reading The Tiger. He finds it beautiful and grabs some more books to read. Sarah Jane is shot down so she can be webbed up to be eaten by the eight legs. Someone knocks on Barnes' door and in comes Yates, who has overheard everything, but he gets knocked out with a lead pipe. It's morning on Metebelis 3 and the Doctor is fully recovered. He gets the others up while in the night Sarah Jane has been completely wrapped in spider silk. Eric's father explains that she's a prisoner of the eight legs and there are to be food for them. The Doctor is surprised that they have sheep and is told that the humans on Metebelis 3 were colonists, while Eric's brother can't understand why he isn't worried about Sarah Jane. We are in a cut with Sarah Jane and the Doctor detailing that the eight legs were mutations of earth spiders enlarged by the crystals, and the Doctor agrees to help save them. Yates has been tied up and gagged while the Doctor is using the machine to check for stones that'll fight against the spider's attacks. He's having little luck until he finds out one that seems to work. The Doctor leaves with the stone towards the castle of the spiders across the landscape. Sarah Jane struggles and can't believe Eric's father is so calm. Sarah Jane says that they must have hope because the Doctor might come to their rescue. He sneaks around and is seen by the guards, whom he fights, but Lupton enters and is arrested. The Doctor talks back to Lupton and tries to leave, but is confronted with more guards, saying his execution has only been postponed. He's brought into the webbing room where it's revealed he is to stay as prisoner, also to be eaten by the eight legs. This leads into part 5, where Lupton is brought before the Queen, who knows that they don't have the crystal because they can trace it back to Earth. Lupton talks his way out of the problem by saying he knows where the crystal is, and Lupton's spider claims that it isn't the first mistake the Queen made. The Queen says she'll ask the Great One to see if they can attack Earth. The Doctor says that he's glad that he now knows what a fly feels like when it's stuck in a webbing, and Sarah Jane asks why the spiders didn't take the crystal before the Doctor. He says they're in the future of the planet and informs them that Eric is coming to rescue them. 2 guards come in and cut out Sarah Jane and lead her away to be eaten. Eric and his party are moving out when his mother tries to stop them because she's already lost her husband and doesn't want to lose her only son. His brother convinces her to let them go because they're fighting for freedom, while the Doctor still tries to get out by compressing his muscles, which he learned how to do from Harry Houdini. He leaves to go find Sarah Jane and a knife to get Eric's father out as well. Sarah Jane is thrown in with the Queen, who tells her not to fear because she's going to help her. She says she lied to the Council so they can get peace for the two legs, which she's mentally being fought by Sarah Jane's mind. Sarah Jane realizes the Queen wants her and the Doctor to get the crystal for them, but agrees to help when the Queen has told the Queen that she'll free all the humans after this is over. Yates is ungagged by Barnes, and Barnes tells him that they can't do anything about Lupton. Yates suggests re-establishing the link through the mandala, and he unties him. Lupton says they'll make their way for the invasion of Earth, and the Council doesn't trust anyone other than the Council. Even the Queen is distrusted now, while Lupton is on the floor. Tommy's still reading his books, which he finds easier but still needs help. He thinks he can trust Yates, but overhears him being friendly with Lupton's men. This makes him decide to find Choji, who'd know what to do and remembers about the crystal. The Doctor is lured to the cave of the Great One because he heard Sarah Jane's voice, which the Great One is imitating. The Doctor can't see the Great One, who demands to have the crystal back that he stole. The Doctor stole the one last perfect crystal, and the Doctor refuses to give it back to them, so the Great One interferes with his mind, making him walk in circles like a puppet on strings. In the Council's chamber, contact has been made with Earth as the group chants to the mandala, and a spider disappears from the Council room, and they all start reappearing in the corners of the room. Tommy tells Choji that the situation and says they will tell Campo when they know what to tell him exactly. Choji sends Tommy down to get the crystal, which he goes to stop the people from chanting. The Doctor starts wandering around the cave while Choji makes the group stop with the mandala as a spider appears and shoots him and Yates. Tommy comes down to see the spiders and decides to tell Campo. The Doctor finds Sarah Jane, who uses the Queen's power to teleport them away as the revolutionary group enters. They reappear in front of the TARDIS, and the Doctor sets them off for Earth. They rematerialize in the cellar and find Yates and Choji on the floor while one of the spiders has taken over the rest of the group, which the Doctor fights off with the stone, and Tommy leads them out. Tommy tells Sarah Jane he hopes he isn't normal and takes him to see Kan-po. They go into his room and the doctor greets him in Tibetan. Tommy goes to keep watch and Kan-po has the doctor tell him his tale, which he already knows. Kan-po suggests they've already known each other, while the men break out of the cellar and attack Tommy outside the door, shooting him when he doesn't let them in. This leads into part 6, where Sarah Jane reveals that the spiders want to take over the universe when Kan-po makes the crystal appear out of thin air. Sarah Jane shoots down the doctor, who pleads with her to remember who she is, and Kan-po helps him see the spider on her back. The doctor tells her to struggle against the spider, and Kan-po tells her she's free and doesn't have to be dominated. He makes her look at the crystal, which of course makes Sarah Jane regain control and kill the queen, which falls off her back and shrivels up. Outside, the group is having difficulty getting Tommy to stay down because he's innocent or something, and try to get more power from Metebelis. Kan-po explains that the doctor needs to face his greed for knowledge to overcome the menace, because this is all his fault. Which it is, so that makes the doctor realize Kan-po is the hermit from his childhood. Kan-po explains he left Gallifrey, regenerating and coming to Tibet. He also explains that Choji is just a projection of himself, so he knows what's been going on as well. Choji gets Yates up from the cellar, as the spiders on Metebelis send power to those on Earth. Kan-po tells the doctor that the moment approaches for the both of them. The doctor knows what he has to do by facing his fear. Kan-po gives him the crystal, so he gives it to the Great One, which is going to destroy him. Tommy finally falls against the door, so Kan-po helps him get out. Yates gets shot, saving Tommy, and Kan-po is also shot after teleporting the doctor to the cellar. The doctor dematerializes the TARDIS and goes back to Metebelis 3 and asks for Eric's help into getting into the Cave of Crystal. Choji and Tommy take Yates to Kan-po, while Eric reveals that their attack actually failed, and they brought the doctor to the Spiders' Council. The doctor says he'll only give the crystal to the Great One herself, and Lupton makes a grab for the crystal but is stopped, and the doctor is allowed to go on to the cave to die. Lupton has a freak-out calling the eight-legged spider, which makes them shoot him dead. The doctor sees the Great One, an even bigger spider, and begs to allow the spiders to stay away from Earth. The doctor asks why the crystal is so important, and the Great One explains that a web of crystals gave her the power until it gets bigger, which the doctor explains will not work because the energy can't go to infinity and she'll explode. You can see the cave's radiation is slowly draining him of his energy as he speaks. The crystal goes into the web as the power of the Great One grows. The doctor begs for them to stop as the energy builds up, killing her. The cave starts to collapse as the doctor makes a run for it. The humans are set free from the eight legs and they make a run out. The doctor then takes his TARDIS away as the mountain explodes. Back at Unit, it's been 3 weeks since the doctor disappeared. Sarah Jane's come in to see if there was any sign of him, and the Brigadier greets her, saying that he'll turn up eventually, but Sarah Jane thinks he really is dead this time. The TARDIS then materializes and the doctor staggers out and says he got lost in the time vortex before falling over. Sarah Jane asks him why he went back, and he gasps he had to face his fears. She asks him to please don't die. He doesn't reply, "A tear, Sarah Jane? Now don't cry. Where there's life, there's..." trailing off into silence. Kan-po appears on a table and says not to be afraid, but Sarah Jane is still distraught. Kan-po explains that he just needs a rush of energy for regeneration, which Kan-po will initiate immediately as he disappears. They look, and the doctor changes into his fourth body, as played by Tom Baker, ending the episode. Final thoughts? Planet of the Spiders is a story that can lend itself to criticisms on the amount of Pertwee cliches present. I mean, I counted 14 in total, which is much more than in any other Pertwee story, and as much as I made it a gag, these cliches being put in actually suits the story. The story is meant to be a celebration of the Pertwee era, after the final game fell through and Pertwee decided to leave the role. This is also Barry Letts' love letter, as he helped write, directed, and produced this story as a tour de force, because this would be his final season as producer, although he would produce Tom Baker's opening story at about the same time. Letts does a great job of directing and knowing how to move the camera, and had some of the problems with the CSO as he helped pioneer its use and techniques. Although he has some problems with the reprisals of the cliffhangers for parts 5 and 6 in particular, as they're way too long, and in Part 6, they even add some missing footage that wasn't there originally, so it makes those 2 episodes kind of harder to get into. The acting, on the other hand, is great, with Jon Pertwee giving another tour de force in his finals performance, and Elizabeth Sladen fitting into her role, although she doesn't really have as much to do here as she could have. I mean, really her biggest contribution is getting the story started and then being hypnotized by the Queen. The spiders are also chilling in the respect that their voices sound really creepy. There are quite a few problems, however, in that all the supporting characters are forgettable, and their names are mentioned in passing or not mentioned at all. Really, only the Queen Spider, Lupton Spider, and Lupton himself are the three villains that actually have any sort of an impact. Oh, and the Great One, I suppose. And really, Campo, Choji, and Tommy are really the only other people of the monastery that you can really remember. All of Lupton's goons, because there are about like 5 of them, they just sort of sit there and don't do much. Also, the design of Metebelis 3 is vastly different from what we see in The Green Death, and it looks a lot less, it makes it look a lot less that the humans are an advanced version of humans. They look way too primitive to be from the far future, which they're supposed to be from. I mean, they're supposed to be a colony. They look more like Native Americans, with stereotypes, which doesn't suit it. Because when we saw it in The Green Death, it was all very blue. Now it's more of just a random desert that could be anywhere. Also, Mike Gates really needed a scene with the Brigadier to come to terms with what happened in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, but I won't exactly fault the story for that. So all in all, I give Doctor Who, Planet of the Spiders, a 70% for being a great example of the Pertwee era, but having some very weak characterization and quite a few bad effects. I do recommend the story, and it was released on DVD in all regions in 2011. Sadly, it's currently out of print in Region 1, and I can't promise availability, but the Amazon link will still be there in the description below if you want to check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time when we see the introduction of the 4th Doctor and the changing of the production team in Robot.
Hello, Miss Smith.
Oh, hello, Brigadier. I just thought I'd pop in and... Well, to tell you the truth, don't quite know why I did pop in, actually.
To see if there was any sign of the old fellow, eh?
Yes. But there can't be, can there? I mean, he's been gone over 3 weeks now.
Oh, that's nothing. One time I didn't see him for months. And what's more, when he did turn up, he had a new face. Could have been a completely different man.
No. He knew if he went back there, he would destroy himself. We'll never see him again.
Got lost in the time vortex. The TARDIS brought me home.
Oh, Doctor, why did you have to go back?
I had to face my fear, Sarah. I had to face my fear. That was more important than just going on living.
Please, don't die.
A tear? Sarah Jane? No, don't cry. While there's life, there's...
It's all right. He is not dead.
Oh, no. don't think I can take much more.
I'm sorry to have startled you, my dear.
Won't you introduce me to your friend, Miss Smith?
Oh, yes, this is the abbot of... No, it's Choji. I mean, it looks like Choji, but it is really Campo Rinpoche. I think.
Thank you. That makes everything quite clear.
The doctor is alive.
No, you're wrong. He's dead.
All the cells of his body have been devastated by the Metabelus crystals, but you forget. He is a Time Lord. I will give the process a little push and the cells will regenerate. He will become a new man.
Literally?
Of course, he will look quite different.
Not again.
And it will shake up the brain cells a little. You may find his behavior somewhat erratic.
Well, when will all this happen?
Well, there's no time like the present, is there? Goodbye. Look after him.
Now, wait a moment.
Look, Brigadier, look. I think it's starting.
Well, here we go again.